Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. So we've all seen what the US has done to the Nord Stream pipelines, how they treat their allies, especially Germany. The whole world knows that the US has done it. This is why there's not really any investigation, and you can see how all of the allies, European countries, are just staying shut. They don't mention anything about it. The media is not mentioning anything about it. It's been a huge blackout of this story of Nord Stream 2. So, when it comes to Taiwan, it looks like the US is going to do another Nord Stream 2 against Taiwan. And you can see here, former Trump official claims the US would destroy TSMC plants were China to invade Taiwan. And you can see Robert O'Brien told Semaphore this week that the US and its allies would destroy TSMC's manufacturing capacity in Taiwan if they fail to prevent China from invading and taking over the self-ruled island. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. I mean, they've done it to Germany, they've done it to their allies, and they have a history of doing that to their allies. And obviously, they do not want this kind of technology falling into the Chinese hands, so I wouldn't be surprised if the US do that. Like I said, they do not really care about the Taiwanese people, nor do they care about the Taiwanese businesses like TSMC. They're all after their own interests. And silly enough, you have the Taiwanese president going all the way to the US to meet the House Speaker, and it's just not only is she angering the Chinese, she's also angering the Taiwanese people as well, because here you have a president basically escalating stuff with the US, and the Taiwanese are basically going to be used as pawns the same way the Ukrainians were used as pawns. So the Taiwanese Security Bureau obviously has seen this article, and they said there's oh please sir, there's no need to destroy TSMC's fab, sir. If China invades, please don't destroy it. China might get the golden hen, but that don't won't lay the golden eggs. So basically what they're trying to say is even if China gets hold of the equipment, they do not have the knowledge, the skills, they do not have access to the supply chains and various raw materials that you need to operate these machines. So TSMC is very confident even if Chinese get hold of this equipment, they won't be able to make it work. However, I beg to differ. So you have Lindsey Graham again opening his big mouth, and he's saying he is open to deploying troops in Taiwan. However, let me just tell you that having US troops in Taiwan is going to be a major red line for China. I can tell you that they will not allow this to happen. However, there are some US troops in there in Taiwan, but it's a very small capacity. I believe there's under 100 US troops in Taiwan as we speak. They are training Taiwanese troops and also giving them advice and things like that. And you can see here, it's confirmed. There are currently several dozen US troops stationed in Taiwan, and the Wall Street Journal reported in February that Washington plans to increase this number to 100 to 200. I mean, having US troops between 100 and 200 is not major number to escalate things. I mean, these guys can be consultants, they could be training Taiwanese troops, and it's fine. We're talking about military bases, about with 50,000 US troops, like they've done with Okinawa, for example. That would be a major red line. And anything along those lines, you can guarantee that China would invade Taiwan. So I'm going to come back to TSMC shortly. I want to talk about this major thing that China has done to retaliate against these Western brands. And you can see the Western brands, what they've done recently, they've been placing a lot of sanctions on China, especially with the chips. You have the Chip 4 group, including Japan, South Korea, and also the Netherlands as well, which have been blocking access to not only new machines, but old machines, DUV machines to China. You have the Samsung and Japanese companies refusing to sell chip machines to China because of that as well. So China decided to fight back, and also Germany is being very hawkish towards China lately. They have been wanting to kick out Chinese investments. They're looking to kick out Huawei, and you can see, Baerbock being very vocal with the anti-Chinese views. So is Scholz, and they know Scholz is an absolute puppet. So Germany has completely capitulated to the US side, and China knows this. So China is thinking of ways they can retaliate, and this is the perfect way for them to do so. And you can see from this article, there's a new pollution standard which they have recently announced. And what that means is any cars which are gasoline um, are going to be um, banned for sale from July 2023 onwards. So they've recently postponed it to January 2024, which is another 6 months, which is not going to really make a difference. But the problem we have here is these cars, Japanese brands, German brands, American brands, Korean brands, they have huge number of cars. We're talking about fossil fuel cars, petrol cars, diesel cars, basically any petrol cars. There's a huge number of them not sold in China. And we're talking about millions and millions, could even reach up to a billion. I mean, there's a huge number of cars we're talking about. And China is their biggest market. And Japan's made a lot of money from China. German cars have been making a lot of money from China. American cars, GM, Ford have been making a lot of money from China. And you're welcome to look at their yearly company reports, and you can clearly see that China is their biggest market when it comes to fossil fuel cars. And these companies are very slow when it comes to converting to EV. Obviously, Japan is probably the slowest. They are going to be really heavily hit. German cars are on the process of going into EVs, but again, they are very slow. Same with American brands, and same with Korean brands. And you can see French brands right at the bottom. And you can see in terms of Japanese brands, they're going to be hit the hardest already. There's minus 40% year on year loss of the Japanese brands are making. German brands minus 21%, American brands minus 12.5%, Korean brands minus 22.4%. And the biggest winners from this is going to be the Chinese EV cars. And as you know, Chinese EV cars are absolutely running the market at the moment, BYD and many other car companies. And when this rule comes into place, Chinese cars are going to be the ones that are going to be benefiting the most, as well as Tesla. Tesla is also going to be benefiting. However, all of these cars which are fossil fueled, they can't sell them. Even now they cannot get rid of them. They're trying to get rid of them by reducing the price. However, Chinese people are not buying these cars because they know as soon as this rule comes into effect, they cannot drive these cars around their cities, and they'll find it very difficult to sell these cars in the future. So a lot of Chinese people are now just buying EV cars because they want to keep themselves protected, and nobody's buying these petrol cars anymore. And already the Audi, Volkswagen, Toyota, all of these CEOs are absolutely crapping themselves. They just don't know what to do because you're going to have millions of their cars which are unsold in their biggest market, which is China. And what they're going to do, they're going to lose a huge amount of money, huge amounts of money. And I want to show you this article here as well. Volkswagen becomes the world's most indebted company, owes more than South Africa. And he says here Volkswagen owes around 192 billion in debt. And it's not just Volkswagen. It owes more than South Africa in terms of debt. It's not just Volkswagen. Not far behind is Toyota, 138 billion in debt. Ford with 122. BMW with 14 billion in debt. Out of the 10 out of the 10 most indebted companies in the world, 5 are automakers. And when this rule comes into effect, companies, these car companies, are going to be absolutely screwed. They won't be able to sell one of these cars in China, and they're going to be absolutely panicking. And this debt level is going to shoot up. And I don't even know if these companies are going to survive. So China has hit them really hard, and China has hit this in a way where this will hit every single country that's been placing sanctions on China. So basically, they have basically hit them all back with one ball. With one ball. So obviously, the Japanese brands, Japanese have been agreed to not sell these machines to China. Germans already kicking out Huawei, and they're also going to be banning a lot of other Chinese investments and stuff. And Germany's been very much anti-Chinese. American brands, obviously, you know what the Americans have been doing to China with all of their sanctions. Same with Korea. Korea's agreed not to sell chip machines and chip equipment to China as well. So China's hitting them all with one ball. It's absolute genius, if you ask me. And these companies are going to be absolutely destroyed all in one ball. So this is definitely going to help the Chinese EV industry. There's going to be more people buying their EV cars, and this will help Chinese EV cars grow. And also add an added bonus. This will help pollution as well. This will help reduce pollution in Chinese cities. And also an added bonus is China is not going to need as much oil. So if most of their cars are running on EVs and electricity, they'll be less likely for China to buy so much oil from the Middle East and also from Russia and other countries. So they're not going to be as reliant on oil if they can push everyone to be driving EV cars. So there's a lot of pluses for China to do this. So I'm going to go back to talking about TSMC. You can see from this article here, American dream turns into a nightmare for TSMC. Double taxation rules hinders expansion plans. So if you don't know what TSMC has done, they've agreed to open 2 Arizona plants worth 40 billion, and they're going to build in Arizona, Phoenix, and everybody knows that it's one of the driest parts of United States. They're having huge drought issues, and when you build semiconductors, you need a lot of water. So water is one commodity that Phoenix and Arizona does not have. So there's a couple of reasons why TSMC is building in Arizona. Number one, they expected to get some subsidies from the United States. However, the subsidies have not been agreed yet, while their main rival, Intel, who also has fabs in Arizona, they already have subsidies as well, and and Intel is already building 2 or 3 more fabs with that subsidy from the United States. So again, the United States is basically favoring their own, technology companies as opposed to foreign technology companies, not TSMC. There's a new rule that they've come out as well. There's a double taxation rule for foreign companies like TSMC. So it looks like TSMC will have to pay much more in tax, and all of these promises that Biden said to TSMC, if you come and open factories to us, we'll give you tax benefits, we'll give you subsidies. All of that has been false. All of that has been a trick for TSMC to spend money and build these fabs in the United States, and they're going to be wasting their money. First of all, all of the promises that have been made to TSMC, all of them have been ignored, and they have been absolutely tricked, and it's their own fault. You got to say it's their own fault. It's like Zelensky. Yeah, and all the people fighting Russia for Zelensky, they've all been tricked, they've all been had. By the end of the day, you have your own mind, you have your own brain, so you need to basically make sure that you don't get scammed. And TSMC is definitely being scammed. And it's not just this article talking. Many articles are saying it as well. Reuters are saying TSMC is talking to US about Chips Act guidance amid subsidy concerns. So they're very much concerns about they're not going to receive any subsidies whatsoever. And Intel has come online and said um, these subsidies only need to be for American companies, not for foreign-based companies. So these subsidies have been stopped for TSMC, while all these American companies are gaining huge amounts of subsidies. And also, you got to look at the economy as well. The U.S. economy is not doing very well. So where they're going to get this money from? The dollar is being destroyed every single day. US is getting closer and closer to recession. So TSMC is in a major, major pickle at this moment. So you have another article here says TSMC believes it has access to enough water for its US fabs in dry Phoenix. So can you see the article here? TSMC believes it has access. So TSMC believing it has access is not the same as having access to water, right? It's like me saying, "Oh, I believe I have access to clean drinking water in my new flat, but I haven't gone there to check yet. I haven't gone to, I haven't bought the flat yet. I haven't gone and checked. You need to be 100% sure before you invest 40 billion of your own money. Having that belief is not enough. You need basically proof. You need to make sure 100% that water is there. If not, you're in a major, major pickle. And you can see the New York Times saying inside Taiwanese chip giant, a US expansion stokes tensions. Employees' doubts are rising about Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company's 40 billion investment in an Arizona factory. So what's happening is obviously they don't have the skills in the US. So TSMC is having to train up a lot of Americans, and TSMC is taking a lot of their engineers out of Taiwan and sending them over to the US to train these new guys, American guys. However, what's happening is when these guys get visas and when these guys head over to the United States, they get stolen by Intel and other companies. So all of these guys that TSMC is sending over to the US to train other Americans, these guys are being stolen by Intel and other semiconductor companies as well, and they're giving them a much more better salary and much better, obviously better conditions and stuff like that. So TSMC is completely losing out, and people are saying that TSMC is being used. They're going to be used for not only their talent, they're stealing their talent, but also going to be stealing their technology. And, you know, everybody knows TSMC is the number one fab company in the world, and the US is doing everything they can to not only steal their technology, but also to steal their skill force as well. And this is what this article is about. And also TSMC are saying that they're training these American engineers, but these engineers are not as hardworking as Taiwanese engineers. But end of the day, you know, people in Asia generally work harder than people in the West anyway. Everyone knows that. People in Japan, Korea, China, they work super, super hard. While in the West, we kind of we have obviously labor laws and stuff. We need to work certain hours per day. We have our holidays and things like that. So it's a very, very different culture. And we love our holidays in the West. We love our time off. We love, spending time with families. But, it's not the same in Asia. Asia people generally do tend to work harder. And you can see here with what this article is about. Yeah, so the latest additions to Intel's foundry business, Intel Foundry Services, are Suk Lee and Michael Chang, two TSMC veterans who have combined experience of 44 years working for the Taiwanese company. Lee's title at Intel is Vice President of the Ecosystem of Technology Office, while Chang has taken the role of Vice President of Customer Enablement, according to their respective LinkedIn profiles. So you can see even high-ranking people from TSMC are joining Intel, and TSMC can't do anything about it. A bunch of suckers, absolutely bunch of suckers. You know, they think that Americans are the friends and they'll treat them nice and stuff. They're just being absolutely used and hammered, not only for their skills, but also for, their money. They're using them for their money to build these fabs. They're gonna steal their technology. They're gonna be stealing their people. And TSMC is absolutely falling for it, exactly the same way Ukraine has been falling for it. Basically, Ukraine is being used to fight America's proxy war. Same way TSMC is going to be absolutely used and abused. And once TSMC loses its um, number one status, trust me, America will just dump them and spit them out like they usually do. And you can see the proof is in the pudding. TSMC posts its first fall in monthly revenue in years. Already you can see the share price of TSMC has gone all down to half. And it's not just TSMC, the share prices of other companies are falling as well. Samsung's chip production profits plunged by 96%. And this is because Samsung has agreed to curbing selling chips to China. So if they can't sell chips to China, where are they going to sell it to? So this is why they have lost 96% of their profits. So there's some major companies, TSMC, Samsung, even American companies are losing profits, losing market share. Nvidia, Intel, Micron stocks fall after China calls foul on Japanese chip restrictions. And if they cannot sell to their biggest market, and the biggest market is China, they are the manufacturing hub of the world. And if you cannot sell your chips to China, who else are you going to sell it to? What other manufacturing hubs are there in the world? There's not many. China is the number one manufacturing hub in the world by far. And you are just destroying your own business just for geopolitics, just because the US government tells you to. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you can see China is also fighting back to US chip maker Micron as well, and they have put Micron in some sort of government sanctions list, and they're investigating the company. So slowly over time, China doesn't need these companies to be making money in Chinese soil, while they're also going to be putting sanctions on China as well. China is slowly trying to weed these companies out, because if you're going to put sanctions on China and refuse to sell China chips they needs, then why are you in China making money from China? Then you might as well just get out. TSMC has also shut down its fabs in China as well. However, it wants to reopen them again. I don't know if they will be allowed to reopen them again, to be honest. But these chip companies are completely shooting themselves in the foot. Not only American chip companies, but also Japanese chip companies, Korean chip companies, and even Netherlands ASML, who's refused to sell DUV machines to China. They are very soon going to be hit in terms of money as well, because with the world economies going into recession right now, there's a less and less need for chip making. There's a huge amount of chips that these chip companies cannot sell. I believe there's about 90% inventories of all of these chips that they cannot get rid of in China, because nobody wants to buy them anymore. And if you cannot get rid of chips, then you have companies like TSMC who have to close down their fabs, EUV machines. They have to close them down because nobody's giving them orders to make more chips. And also, you know, companies like ASML won't be able to sell more advanced chip making equipment as well because if the demand for chips is slow in the West, if they cannot get rid of these chips and if they're losing money, then these companies are not going to invest in making in building more fabs and buying more equipment from ASML. So ASML will lose out as well. In the meantime, China is building up his own DUV technology, and I believe there's a company called SMEE who's soon going to be releasing a 28 nanometer machine, DUV machine, and that will help, you know, the country as well as the chip industry in China. And with 28 nanometers chip devices, you're able to make 14 nanometer chips because what you can do is stacking technology, which China also uses as well. SMIC uses stacking technology. So with these 28 nanometer machines, you're able to make 14 nanometers as well as 7 nanometers. That's what SMIC has been doing. So I'm going to move on now to the next company, Huawei. So you can see with Huawei, recently they announced a huge revenue. They've been making more revenue this year compared to last year. They have expanded their business in various different areas, EV cars, data centers. They are, basically doing a lot, mining as well. Many sectors they have been kind of putting their hands in. And also they have announced that they have managed to produce EDA tools going 14 nanometers and above. So what the EDA tools do, these are design tools mainly run by American companies previously, and Huawei and other Chinese companies have been banned from using these EDA tools. So Huawei and other Chinese companies have been making their own EDA tools using RISC-V architecture, and RISC-V is open source. So they have managed to produce 14 nanometers and above. And this is exactly what China needs at the moment. China is not producing 5 nanometers and below chips at this moment in time. They're focusing on 14 nanometers chips. There are companies such as SMIC is producing 14 nanometers chips. 28 nanometers and also 7 nanometers chips as well. And this is due to chip stacking. So they're using DUV, older technology, DUV machines to do that. And China is just focusing on building these mature nodes because 90% of the industry just needs these mature nodes. So we're talking about cars, EV cars, fridges, you know, laptops, things like that. You don't really need 5 nanometers and below. Those are for high-end phones like Apple phones and things like that. But 90% of the chips needed is 28 nanometers and below. And the fact that Huawei is able to produce 14 nanometers and above EDA tools is a huge leap forward for China. I don't know if many of you remember when Huawei was kicked out of UK, and at the time, Huawei was building a huge 5G infrastructure for UK, and they had already built up most of the infrastructure. They have put all of the equipment down around most of UK, and UK would have been one of the number one countries in Europe to implement 5G, one of the fastest countries in Europe to implement 5G. And in terms of technology, it would have been leaps and bounds ahead of other countries in the EU and also above the United States as well. However, the United States basically spent 9 hours shouting at UK officials, getting them to ban Huawei. And Trump at one point picked up the phone and started shouting at Boris Johnson, told him to get rid of Huawei immediately. And this is exactly what Boris Johnson did. He got rid of Huawei immediately based on Trump's shouting match over the phone. And he didn't really look at how much it's going to cost UK. So already the infrastructure was in place, but not only was 5G infrastructure in place but also 4G infrastructure was in place for Huawei as well. And you can see from this article here, according to a report by ITASS on March 25 this year, the United Kingdom seems to have regretted dismantling Huawei's telecommunications equipment. Recently, British Telecom announced they would postpone dismantling of Huawei's telecommunication equipment for 6 months. The reason is government subsidies for disarming these equipment have not been in place. After dismantling, it will cost a lot of money to rebuild Vodafone's 5G equipment as a spare tire is not mature. If Huawei's telecommunication equipment continue to be dismantled, British telecom companies can only provide 2G and 3G network signals in many areas. So I don't know if any of you have been to UK, but when you go on the underground, the train doesn't provide any sorts of internet. You basically are blind as a doorknob. Just you're sitting on a train looking at somebody's face for a whole hour or even an hour and a half, going through the whole journey. You've got nothing to do because you've got no internet signal on your phone. When you're on the bus, you have no internet signal because most of it's not working. When you're walking around the streets, you're really struggling to find a hotspot, to go on the internet. It's really, really bad when it comes to internet. So as this article says, dismantling Huawei equipment is going to cost British at least 50 billion. And there was an article that said that Britain is looking to lose around 300 billion in total. And that includes dismantling all of Huawei's equipment, replacing it with Vodafone 5G, and Vodafone 5G is not even close to Huawei when it comes to providing 5G. Yeah, and they're still not mature in terms of that technology, and they're still not in a place to replace Huawei, not only in UK but around the world. And also, Britain is going to be losing hundreds of billions in technology in having 5G. For example, you won't be able to use autonomous driving. You won't have fast data centers. You can't have like remote surgeries. There's a lot of technologies that need 5G, and you cannot use any of that if you don't have 5G. And Britain is going to be losing out. And already it's been a couple of years. Since Huawei was kicked out, and already they still to this day have not have true 5G in around UK, and it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, they call it they have something called 5G, but it's not true 5G. It's just the British people being taken for a ride. The government calls it 5G, but it's actually 4.5G. It's not true 5G. The speeds doesn't compare to anything in China, for example. So they're basically taking the British for a ride. They have a service they call it 5G, but it's actually more 4G than 5G. So it's absolutely ridiculous what how the British have completely shot themselves in the foot and losing hundreds and hundreds billions in the process. So Huawei has also abandoned the £1 billion UK campus, but this is actually closer to 8 billion if you count the number of employees Huawei were going to have and the amount of money that this business would have generated, the jobs and other facilities that this would have provided to the UK industry. So it's probably more closer to 8 billion, and they are going to be losing out because Huawei is going to abandon this campus. They've already had planning permission to build it, but what is the point of going ahead with it when the British is kicking out every single Huawei investment from the UK, and they're kicking out Huawei away from the UK? So what is the point investing in UK anymore? So Huawei has completely abandoned it, and this is really bad news for UK because of Huawei, other Chinese companies are not going to invest in UK. They're going to look at how Huawei is being treated in UK, and Chinese companies are going to stay away from UK because of that. So Britain is losing again hundreds and hundreds of billions in investments from Chinese companies by acting this way towards Chinese companies like Huawei. And you can see Politico is also basically saying that there's cracks appearing in the West 5G strategy after Huawei. And what the Political article is saying is the West does not really have a solution, 5G solution, by kicking out Huawei. Huawei was the number one company and the only company providing true 5G speeds, and they don't really have any other companies to replace Huawei in the West. And this is why American companies are falling behind, European companies are falling behind, because they don't really have true 5G. And when you have true 5G, you can, you know, you can. It gives you so many benefits, especially when it comes to AI and many other great benefits that 5G could provide, but they are falling behind Asian countries such as China, such as Japan, South Korea, because they don't really have a 5G network. And you can see Germany again falls in line with the EU and the USA by banning Huawei. They have been basically uh, thinking about how to do it over the past 2 years, but looks like they're going to be going ahead with banning Huawei. And this is why China is going ahead by pushing this pollution law to ban, petrol cars from July. And this is going to affect German companies greatly, especially car companies, and China knows this, but this is basically Germans' own fault by colluding with the West, colluding with the USA, and China's not going to sit there and take it. So the other thing that China is doing is they are also putting bans on rare earth minerals as well. So they're going to ban certain rare earth minerals to the West, especially when these minerals are going to be used for semiconductor equipments and also semiconductors. So they're going to ban these from being used in Netherlands, in Japan, in South Korea. So it's going to hit them where it hurts because China still controls 90% of the rare earths in the world. And also they also produce a lot of neon, and neon gas is also needed for semiconductor equipment. Before the Ukraine war, the Ukraine was producing most of the neon gas, and as well as Russia. But because those factories have been completely destroyed and they have been refusing to buy from Russia directly. The next country in line is China, and China is going to also ban neon gas to be sold in Netherlands, Japan as well. So these equipments won't be able to be used without neon gas. So China is basically fighting back. They're not going to sit there and take all of these sanctions when it comes to the semiconductors and other sanctions that the US and the West is trying to put. And you know, by the sounds like these are the same sanctions that the West have been placing on Russia, and which has completely backfired on them, which has completely boomeranged back, and now is hitting US and European economies more than it's hitting Russian economy. And it's the same way when they try and place these sanctions on China, it's just going to hit US companies and other companies that are allied with it more than it does to China. And I've shown you all of the articles to prove that. And again, the US and its allies going blindly, following the US blindly, placing all of these sanctions on China. Once again, they are not thinking about the consequences, they are not thinking about the impacts. They are basically doing whatever the hell they want. They are blindly following the US when it comes to placing sanctions on China. And once again, you can see American businesses and European businesses and allied businesses failing because they are blindly following US's actions and sanctions. And when will it end? When will these companies ever learn? They're not going to learn. I would probably call it stupidity because it keeps happening again and again and again. And anyway, thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate you guys taking your time listening to me so far. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, help the algorithm, and if you can really kindly um, help the channel by joining my Patreon or locals, I'd really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon.